Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of textual study of the Quran. You would recall that we were studying verses 83 to 103 of Surah Baqarah, and we had finished off translating idiomatically and literally almost half of the previous section that we were studying. So we will finish the next half off and inshallah then go on to the next section of verses. So we will start off by literally and idiomatically translating verses 93 onwards until this section finishes, and then we will take up the next section. So it says, وَإِذْ أَخَذْنَا مِيثَاقَكُمْ وَرَفَعْنَا فَوْقَكُمُ الطُّورَ خُذُوا مَا آتَيْنَاكُمْ بِقُوَّةٍ وَاسْمَعُوا قَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَعَصَيْنَا وَأُشْرِبُوا فِي قُلُوبِهِمُ الْعِجْلَ بِكُفْرِهِمْ قُلْ بِئْسَ مَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِهِ إِيمَانُكُمْ in kuntum mu'minin. Wa and is, remember, akhazna, we took, mithaqakum, mithaq from you, which means your mithaq or your covenant. Wa and rafa'na, we lifted, fawqakum, above you. So fawqa is above and kum is you. It's the same kum as mithaqakum. So kum is meant for plural entities when you are addressing them. So misagakum means your covenant. Fawqakum means over you. At-tur is the mountain or the mountain of Tur. So idiomatically we can translate it as, and remember when we took your covenant and we lifted above you the Tur. This is how we will translate it. And then what did we say? Khuzu ma ataynakum bi quwwatin wasma'u. Khuzu means to hold, to grasp something firmly. So it's an imperative, it's a command. Khuzu, hold it, of course, referring to the Torah. Ma atayna, ma is what? Ataynakum, what we gave to you. So ma is what? Ataynakum means we gave to you. And the kum is exactly the same as misakakum and fawqakum. So this is like a plural entity who is standing in front of you. So khuzu ma ataynakum bi quwwa. So hold fast what we gave to you, biquwa, with power, wa and isma'u, hear intently. So the idiomatic translation would be hold what we gave or grasp what we gave to you with firmness and listen. Okay, and then their reply was qalu sami'na wa asayna. So this is what they reflected from their own attitude, and they said, "We sami'na means we have listened, wa and asayna means we have disobeyed." So it's like a very very picturesque thing which the Quran is portrayed here, that they were actually asked to hold whatever they have been given and to grasp it strongly and to follow it, and to hear it intently, whatever they are being told. And in reply, they said, okay, we have heard and we have disobeyed, as if they had already made up their mind that whatever they'll hear, they will not follow. So it's like a depiction of their attitude. Qalu, they said, Sami'na, we have heard, wa and asayna, and we have disobeyed. Wa ushribu. Ushribu means that something which is made to enrich something which is made to dwell in something. Ushribu fi qulubihim would means ushribu, made to dwell, fi in qulub is the plural of qalb, which means hearts, and hum means they. So the next word is al-ijl, which is the kaf. Be is because, kufri is disbelief, him is theirs. So idiomatically we can translate it as that وَأُشْرِبُوا فِي قُلُوبِهِمُ الْعِجْلِ, that the calf was made to dwell in their hearts. The calf was made to dwell in their hearts بِكُفْرِهِمْ, because of their disbelief. Because of their disbelief, the calf was made to dwell in their hearts. What does that mean? It actually means that they became happy with it by associating a partner with God, like associating a deity. They started to worship it, and worshiping it became something very cherished for them, something that they really liked. It entered their hearts and it stayed in their own hearts as if something for which they were very satisfied. And then it says, "Qul, say, bi'sama, what an evil thing, ya'murukum, Ya'murukum is they order. Kum is you. Ya'murukum would mean what an evil thing they order you. Ya'murukum bihi imanukum. So imanukum would mean your faith orders you bihi. So the translation would be what an evil thing your faith orders you to do. Again, this is the word ya'murukum has multi meanings. Amara ya'muru in Arabic means to command something, to suggest something, to induce someone to do something. So it has all these meanings. So here it would mean what an evil thing has their faith induced them to do. And this is ya'murukum, and again you can see the imanukum, the kum of imanukum, the kum of ya'murukum, and similarly atainakum, misakakum, fawkakum, all these kums, they refer to the audience which is right in front, and once again in the plural. So in kuntum mu'minin, in if kuntum, you are mu'minin, believers. So kul would mean tell them what an evil thing does your faith induce you to do if you are believers. So this is what this is like a rebuke which is sounded by the Quran. It's like being told off by the Quran in a very harsh way, that look what you had actually asked you had committed yourselves to obey. You were given this covenant, you had made this promise, and you stuck to it, you promised it, but then later on you went back on your words. And at the time that you were making that promise, it was as if that instead of listening intently to it and saying that yes, we're going to follow it, you had already rejected it. And then this is the reason for this, is that this attitude of disobedience is referred to as their disbelief. So it was because of this that the love of the calf was made to dwell in their hearts, that they started to really cherish it. And then it's like a really sorrowful comment made that what an evil thing does their faith prompt them to do, what an evil thing does their faith induce them to do if you are believers, of course. Because this is in the present, it's addressed to the people in front of them. So what an evil thing does your faith prompt you to do if you're truly believers? And then qul in kanat lakumud darul akhiratu indallahi khalisatan min dunin nas fatamannavul mauta in kuntum sadiqin. Qul, say, in if kanat was, lakum, for you, ad-dar, house or abode, al-akhirah, the hereafter. So say, if for you is the abode of the hereafter in the law, in the is near God, of course, is Allah, near God. Khalisatan means specifically, just for you. Min dunin nas would mean other than the people, it's just for you. Fatamannavul maut, fatamanna means desire, al-maut is death. In if kuntum, you are sadiqeen, truthful. So idiomatically we can say if the house of the hereafter or the abode of the hereafter is for you before God, specifically for you and not for other people. Min dunin nas would mean not for other people. If that is the case, fatamannavul maut, then desire death if you are truthful. In kuntum sadiqeen, if you are truthful. وَلَنْ يَتَمَنَّوْهُ أَبَدًا بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ. Wa and lan is never. يَتَمَنَّوْهُ, they shall desire. Abadan, ever. So walan yatamannahu abada mean they shall never desire. They shall never ever desire. Bima qaddamat aydihim. Be is because ma, what? Qaddamat, sent forward or sent. Aydihim, their hands. Aydi is the plural of yad. Yad is hand. So ayd is the plural of yad, which means hands. Him is theirs. So because of what their hands sent forward, they shall never desire death ever. Wallahu, and Allah is God. Alimun means has knowledge. Bizzalimin, of the wrongdoers. So this would translate as idiomatically that they shall never desire death because of what their hands have sent forward. Of course, referring to their misdeeds, the deeds that they can never be proud of. They will never desire death, because in their hearts they know that if they go there, and whenever they go there, they shall be held accountable for those deeds. And then that very rebuking remark, Wallahu alimun bil zalimin. Wallah is Allah, wa is of course, and Allah is God, and God, alimun, has knowledge, bil zalimin, of these wrongdoers. So God has knowledge of these wrongdoers. So once again, the thing that I'd like to remind you of is that whenever you translate literally, do take into account the alif lam, the article alif lam, which actually defines a noun. Either it makes it into a proper noun, it makes a common noun into a proper noun, or it is referring to a specific group of people which is found. So az-zalimin would not mean all people who are unjust. It would be referring to the people who are being discussed. So that is why you can see the translation would be that God is aware of these wrongdoers, of these unjust people, not of all unjust people, which of course is a fact that God is aware of all unjust people. But here, a specific category of unjust people is being referred to. And this is important because unless you translate properly the alif lam wherever it is found, there are times when you will not able to make sense of the verse. Just to give you an example, there is a verse, there are verses, in fact, more than one, which say that do not befriend Jews and Christians. So if you translate this word, I mean, and the word Jew and Christian is appended with an alif lam. So if you translate this verse as do not la tattakhidul yahuda wa nasara awliya. So a literal translation would be do not befriend the Jews and the Christians. Do not befriend the Jews and the Christians, which means that actually the Jews and Christians should not be befriended. However, if the alif lam is taken into account, then you will translate this verse as do not befriend these Jews and these Christians who have denied the Prophet, and as a result, they don't deserve to be befriended. So you see, one small error can cause a big misinterpretation, and this has precisely what has resulted. And instead of taking into account that alif lam, most interpreters, when they don't take into account this alif lam, they convey this meaning that do not make friends with all the Jews and all the Christians wherever they are found and whenever you come into contact with. So this is how traditionally this verse is translated, and it makes a mess out of the translation. Okay, now we go on to the next verse. It says, وَلَا تَجِدَنَّهُمْ أَحْرَصَ النَّاسِ عَلَى حَيَاءٍ وَمِنَ الَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا. وَلَا تَجِدَنَّهُمْ أَحْرَصَ النَّاسِ عَلَى حَيَاءٍ. So, wa and la, indeed, tajidannahum, you will find them. The them is the Jews, which are already discussed earlier. So it's referring to them. So, and you will find them. Ahras an-nas, the most desirous of people. Ahras is from hirs, it is the superlative degree, which means the most desirous or the most greediest. An-nas of people. Ala, on, haya is life. So, idiomatic translation would be, and you will find them to be the most desirous of life. They would love to have life. They would love longevity. They will not, I mean, they would never go for the fact that, yes, if they're going to meet God, then he's going to really be generous with them because they are their favored ones. This is what they claim, but in their hearts, they know that what the misdeeds that they have sent forward, they are going to be held to account for them. And therefore, they might desire death from their mouths, but in their hearts, they are absolutely scared of going there. And the fact is, you will find them to be the greediest or the most desirous of hayat, of life. So, wa and la, indeed, tajidannahum, you shall find them. So, tajidanna is you find, him, them. Whom is them? Ahrasannas, the most greediest of people. Ala, on, haya, life. Wa min allazina ashraku, wa and min, from allazina, those ashraku who did shirk, who committed polytheism. So this would mean that you will find them to be most desirous of life even more than the polytheists. Wa min allazina ashraku, and from even more from those who did polytheism, who committed polytheism. Allazina ashraku, who did polytheism, or who indulged in polytheism. Which means that the Jews, the Quran is telling us that they are the most fond of living in this world. Even the idolaters who have taken to pure idolatry, even they are not as desirous of living as these Jews are. And remember, I'm constantly reminding you that we are referring to a particular category of Jews, the Jews which were standing in front of the Quran in those times, who were the recipients of so many books and prophets in their own tradition. And with the advent of the last prophet, their fate was about to be sealed. In fact, in Surah Baqarah, we see that it has already been sealed, and now they are being presented with this charge sheet. So this must not be confused at all with the Jews and Christians of today. Yes, they uphold the same traditions, but the Quran is specifically telling us about the Jews and Christians about the times of the Prophet. And if, of course, today's Jews and Christians uphold those traditions, then they will be regarded to be their followers. But then this is something that calls for a distinction. And that distinction, as I said, is that as far as the punishment of not deliberately, or deliberately denying the Prophet is concerned, that is something which will always remain with the Jews and Christians of the Prophet's times, because it is they who had done so deliberately. And now we are in no position to pinpoint these Jews and Christians, because pinpointing them itself is something which is related to God's revelations, and He has chosen not to reveal these facts in the post-prophetic era. So now some more details. Yawaddu ahaduhum, which means desires, ahad, each, hum, them. So desires each one of them, law, would that, and it's like a longing. Yu'ammar, they be given, alfasana, 1,000 years. Wa and ma, not, huwa, it, be muzahzihihi, be deterrent. Muzahzihihi would mean that it becomes a deterrent, or it becomes detrimental, or it stops something. Min al-azab, min from al-azab is torment. Ayn, an, that yu'ammar, they be given more life. So each one of them longs that he be given 1,000 years. Whereas even if they are given this time, وَمَا هُوَ بِمُزَحْزِحِهِ مِنَ الْعَذَابِ, he will not be able to save himself from torment. So in other words, they desire this long life, but whatever long life they desire, it's going to end one day. And whenever it ends, they will be faced with hell. In other words, وَمَا هُوَ بِمُزَحْزِحِهِ, he is referring to the fact that this prolonging of life is not going to save them. Prolonging of life is not going to save them if they are facing God after even 1,000 years. Even then, the ultimate fate is the same. So whether they live a long life or a short life in the next world, they are going to face the same fate. That is what the Quran is saying. Yawaddu ahaduhum law yu'ammaru alfa sanatin wa ma huwa bimuzahzihihi min al-'azabi an yu'ammar, which means, as I said, literally, that each one of them desires that he be given 1,000 years. And even if these 1,000 years are given to him, he is thus prolonged in his life. This is not going to save him. Muzahzihihi means to save him min al-azab, from torment. Wallah, wa, and Allah, God, basirum, watching, bima, what, ya'malun, they are doing. So God is watching what they are doing, referring to the fact that even 1,000 years are not going to be a time in which God is not going to be unaware of them. Whatever life they spend on the face of this earth, however long it would be, but each of their deeds, every single moment, is in God's record, and He is fully aware of what they do, whether they have a short lifespan or a long lifespan. Then, Qul means say, man, he, kana is, aduvan, enemy, li Jibril, of Gabriel. Fa, therefore, innahu, it is, he. Fa innahu means indeed he. Inna is indeed, and who is he? He is the pronoun is referring to Gabriel. Nazzalahu. Nazzalahu means he has revealed it. Nazzalahu means he has revealed it. Ala, on. Qalbika. Qalb is heart. Ka is you. Your heart, referring to the Prophet. Bi-iznillah. Be is because, or izn is permission, and Allah is God. So idiomatically we can translate it as tell them, or say, he who is an enemy to Gabriel, man kana, he, kana is aduvan, enemy, li Jibril, to Gabriel, fa innahu, so therefore indeed he, nazzalahu, has revealed it, ala, on, qalbika, your heart, O Prophet, bi'iznillah, with God's permission. Musaddiqan lima bayna yadayhi wa hudan wa bushra lil mu'minin. Musaddiqan means in confirmation. Lima of lima bayna yadayhi is one word, of what is before them, or what is before them. Lima bayna yadayhi, wa and hudan, guidance, wa and bushra. Bushra means glad tidings. Lil mu'minin, for the believers. So we can translate it as that he who is an enemy of Gabriel, so therefore he should know that God has revealed it on your فَإِنَّهُ نَزَّلَهُ, he has revealed it, or Gabriel has revealed it on your heart with God's permission. And that book is in confirmation with what is in front of them. So this is a expression that occurs in the Quran a lot, musaddiqan lima bayna yadayhi, which means that the Quran has come in confirmation of the predictions which were found about it in their own books. So musaddiqan is in confirmation, and ma bayna yadayhi means what they already have, referring to the Torah. So the Quran is not an unintroduced book, it's a book that has come to them, and it is a well introduced book. Lima bayna yadayhi means what is in front of them. Wa and huda is guidance. Wa again is and. Bushra is glad tiding or good news. Lil mu'mineen. So the Quran is in confirmation with has been revealed in confirmation with what is already in front of them in the form of the Torah, and it is guidance and bushra, which means glad tidings. Lil mu'mineen, for the believers. Man, he, kana is aduvan, enemy. Lillahi, to God. Wa and malaikatihi, his angels. Wa and rusulihi, his messenger. So he is a pronoun referring to God. So malaikatihi would mean his angels. Rusulihi would mean his messengers, and rusul is the plural of rasul. So rusulihi would mean his messengers. Wa and Jibrila, Gabriel. Wa and Mikala is Michael. Fa, therefore, inna, indeed, Allah, God, aduvan, enemy, lil kafirin, to the disbelievers. Again, remember the alif lam which is found on al kafirin, that would force me to translate it as these disbelievers and not all disbelievers, these disbelievers. So the translation would be man kana aduvan lillah, would mean that he who is an enemy to God and to his angels and to his messengers and to Gabriel and to Michael. So therefore, God is an enemy of such disbelievers. And I have already pointed this out, that Michael is mentioned here, or Mikael is mentioned here, because the Jews regarded him to be their chief angel instead of Gabriel himself, and they had this animosity with Gabriel. So the Almighty has actually turned the tides on them by saying that both Gabriel and Michael, they are angels of God. So if you are an enemy of Gabriel, you just cannot be friendly with Michael, because Gabriel and Michael both are of the same category, of the same genre, and both are angels. So if you are an enemy of Gabriel, remember, you cannot be a friend to Michael. You are an enemy of Gabriel, then you are an enemy of Michael as well. And if this is so, then God is an enemy for such disbelievers. Wa and laqad, indeed, anzalna, we revealed, ilayka, towards you, ayatin, revelations, bayyinat, very clear, very lucid, very eloquent, very something which is very apparent. So the translation idiomatic would be, and indeed we revealed towards you. Ilaika is ila is towards, ka is you, referring to the Prophet himself. So indeed we revealed towards you ayatim bayyinat, we revealed towards you very clear signs. So bayyinat, signs or arguments. And it is the plural of bayyina. So bayyina is a plural of bayyinat, and ayat is signs. So we reveal towards you very clear signs. Va and ma, not. Yakfuru, rejects. Beha, these, beha referring to the signs. Illa, except. Al fasiqun, disobedient. Again we have the alif lam appended to fasiqun, referring to these defined people, these disbelievers, and not to all disbelievers of all time. So idiomatically the translation would be, and except for the defined, no one reject these signs, none reject these signs. Wama yakfuru biha, illal khaif, illal fasiqin, illal fasiqun. So this is a very common construction in Arabic, which means that except this, this will happen. Except for this, this will happen. So, so this is, you'll find it occurring in tandem. The word ma referring to a particle of negation, and then illa expressing an exception. So ma yakfuru biha illal fasiqun would be that none would deny them except the fasik, or except these fasik, to be more precise. Is the question, will that, wa and kullama, whenever, ahadu, they make a promise. Ahdan, so ahdan is that promise. Ahadu means make a promise. Ahdan again is the object which is found within ahadu, and it has been taken out, as I pointed out before. Nabazahu, throw it back. Who throws it back? Fariqun, a group. Minhum, from among them. So bal means in fact. Aktharuhum, most of them. La, not. Yu'minun, believe. So the translation will be that would this happen, that whenever they make a promise, kullama ahadu ahdan, kullama, whenever, ahadu, make, ahdan, a promise, nabazahu, throws it, fariqun, a group, minhum, among them. So whenever, will this happen that whenever they make a promise, one of their groups is going to go back on their promise. One of their groups is going to forsake it away. Nabaza means to throw it away, which means to discard it, to refuse to honor the promise. The fact is, bal aktharuhum la yu'minun. In fact, most of them do not believe. Bal, in fact, la, not aktharuhum, most of them yu'minun, believe. So you can see how the Quran is making a case against them. And then وَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ مُصَدِّقٌ لِمَا مَعَهُمْ نَبَذَ فَرِيقٌ مِّنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَرَاءَ ظُهُورِهِمْ كَأَنَّهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. This is an extraordinary sentence, I would say. It has such powerful beat in it, and it really has that slice and that spite in it. If a person belonging to the Jews can of those times could have really felt this slight in it. So it says, wa and lamma, when, ja'ahum, came to them, rasulun, a prophet, referring to Prophet Muhammad, of course, min, from, indillahi, God, musaddikun, again this is the same word as musaddikan, so just a different declension here. Musaddikun would mean in confirmation. Lima ma'ahum, what is with them. So when a messenger came to them from God in confirmation to what was with them, in confirmation to what they already have. Again, the same sense that when a messenger comes to them in confirmation of what is with them, which means that the predictions or the prophecies of that book is already with them. So when a messenger came to them in confirmation of those prophecies, what do they do? Nabaza fariqu min alladhina utul kitab. Nabaza is the same nabaza that we had in the previous verse. Nabaza means to throw away. Fariqun, a group. Min alladhina utul kitab. Min is from, allazina is those who, utu it means to be given, al kitab, the book, referring to the Torah. So what happened was that when a Rasul came to them in confirmation with what was with them, nabaza fariqu min allazina utul kitab. Nabaza, threw away from one group, threw it away, and that is the group that was given the book. So a group from those people to whom the book had been given threw that book away, which is the Quran. So the book, you have to understand that the word kitab is used here and the word Rasul is used here. So initially it is said that when Prophet Muhammad, of course, referring is the reference by the word Rasul. So when he came to them in confirmation with what was already with them, meaning that the predictions of his arrival were already in the Torah, what happened was they disregarded the book. Kitabullahi wara zuhurihim. So nabaza fariqum min allazina utul kitab, kitabullahi. The word nabaza is actually connected to kitab. So fariqum min allazina utul kitab is just just to be a little grammatical here, is the subject of the word nabaza. So who threw it away? Fariqum min allazina utul kitab. So a group to whom the book was given threw it away. What did they throw away? Kitab Allah, the book of God itself. So people who were given the book, they threw away the book itself, referring to the fact that they ignored the prophecies which were found in their own book about the new messenger who had arrived. Remember the previous verse says, "Lamma ja'ahum rasulun min indillah." When that messenger, for which they were waiting, came to them in confirmation with the predictions that were found with them, ma'marahum nabaza fariqum min allazina utul kitab, threw away one group from among those people who were given the book. What did they throw away? The book itself, Kitab Allah. And it's not just a book, it's book of God, Kitab Allah. Wara zuhurihim. Wara means behind. Zuhur is the plural of zahar, means back. So him would mean their backs. Ka'annahum, as if they, la, not, ya'lamun, no. So this is the crime, this is the real sin or the wrongdoing of the Jews, which is mentioned in many paragraphs of the Quran in Surah Baqarah. But here it is very, very explicit that when a messenger of God came to them with the predictions, in confirmation of those predictions which were already with them, one group of these people of the book, they ignored this book. They threw away. I mean, of course, they did not literally throw away the book. It's metaphorical, meaning that they ignored the book itself. And what did they do? They just threw it behind their backs, as if, I mean, they're not going to attend to it. They're not going to follow it. And the Quran says, "Ka'annahum la ya'lamun," as if they did not know about it. So they already had those predictions found in their own book. But when the messenger came, instead of welcoming him, they ignored those predictions by throwing them away, by just disregarding them, as if they did not know that a messenger had to come to them. Ka'annahum la ya'lamun, as if they did not know. La is not, ya'lamun, they know. So this is the real crime which is being mentioned repeatedly in the Quran, that they very well knew that a messenger is going to come to them. They were totally convinced, but when it happened, they were the first people to deny it. And then what happened? Wattaba'ud, they followed. Ma, what? Tatlu shayateen. Tatlu means read or chant or recite. Shayateen means devils. Of course, shayateen is the plural of shaitan. Ala, on. Mulk is the kingdom. Sulaiman is Solomon, of course, the son of David. Wa and ma, not. Kafara, committed disbelief. Sulaimanu, Solomon. Wa and lakinna, in fact, or you can translate it as but. Ash-shayateen, the devils, kafaru, committed disbelief. So wattaba'u ma tatlu shayateen would mean, and they followed what the devils recited. Tatlu means to recite. So of course the devils would recite their magical spells, they would chant those spells. So these people also, what they did was that instead of following that new prophet, Prophet Muhammad, the last messenger whose predictions had been found in their own books, instead of welcoming him, they went to the other side. They started to indulge in magic and in sorcery, and they started to weave a spell, and they wanted to weave a spell on Prophet Muhammad, but it did not succeed, as we know from other parts of the Quran. But this is what they did. Wattabaru, and they followed those ma tatlu shayateen who followed. I mean, they were the ones who they wanted that they would chant the spells of devils in the age of Solomon. So they followed those people who chanted the spells of the devils in the time of Solomon. So of course they will be the remnants of the people of those times, because in the time of Solomon we know that sorcery, witchcraft and magic was rampant. So instead of welcoming the prophet, they started to follow those people who used to practice sorcery, who used to practice witchcraft. Ma tatlu shayateen would mean that they were the ones who recited it. Ala mulke Sulaiman would mean in the name of Solomon's kingdom. Ala ahde mulke Sulaiman. Ala mulke Sulaiman means that they would do so as if Solomon was someone who was guilty of that, and they would do so. And then the Quran absolves him of Solomon of this and says, "Ma kafara Sulaiman." Solomon never committed disbelief. And the word kafar actually is referring to the fact that Solomon never indulged in sorcery or witchcraft, which is in fact disbelief. So the word disbelief is a step ahead of sorcery. Instead of saying that Solomon did not practice sorcery, The Quran says he did not commit disbelief, as if sorcery itself is disbelief when it is committed in this way. So this is how the Quran at times jumps to the next word. So instead of saying Wama kafara, instead of saying that Solomon did not practice sorcery, it is said he did not commit disbelief, as if telling us that those who practice sorcery in this way, they commit disbelief. وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا. It is in fact the devils who committed disbelief. Shayateen, devils, kafaru, disbelief. And what did they do? يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرِ. يُعَلِّمُون means they teach. An-nasa, people. Sihr means magic. Now, just to make a point here, that the word sihr is also appended by alif lam. But here the alif lam doesn't refer to a particular type of magic. So it's magic. So it's not that you when you translate alif lam, all the while that you refer, you would translate it as this magic, as is the case that we translated earlier on when we said these disbelievers. So it's not always that the alif lam is coming for a specific set of people. At times it refers to a category. So this is called the alif lam of jins. Alif lam of jins means the alif lam of a category. That when it comes on a word, it is not specifying a type within that category. It is referring in general to that category. So when I say a sihr, I mean magic in general, not to a specific form of magic. So this is the distinction that I would like you to know, that at times the alif lam, which is appended on a noun, is not always referring to a specific type, which means, and that whenever it's referring to a specific time, it is called alif lam for ahad. So for the moment, you just need to know that the alif lams are of two types. One of them is called alif lam of jins, which is called alif lam of category. And the other one is called the alif lam of ahad, or the alif lam of specification. So the other alif lam specifies a category within that main category. So when we say these disbelievers, so we are referring to one category amongst those disbelievers. But precisely here, when we say a sihr, we are not referring to a particular form of magic, or we are intent to refer to a particular form of magic. So here the alif lam is of jins, referring to the fact that whatever is called magic is being referred to here. So alif lam of jins and alif lam of ahad, that have to be kept in mind. So, and then wama unzila al malakain, and they started to follow that they would teach people witchcraft, and they went after which was revealed to two angels. So wa is and, ma is what, unzila is revealed, ala upon, al malakain, malak is the word angel, and malakain is for dual. It's the dual means in Arabic, just as we have a singular and a plural, there is another dimension in Arabic in which whenever nouns occur in twos, so we have a category called the duals, which are called the tasniya, which means two things. So malakain would mean two angels. And they started to follow what was revealed to two angels, or they followed what was revealed to two angels. Be Babul, Be is for locus or zarf, which means in. Babul is Babylon. That is the Arabicized version of Babylon. Haruta wa Marut. So Harut and Marut are the two angels. So, and they followed what was revealed to two angels in Babylon. And what is the name of two angels? Harut and Marut. And then it says wa and ma, not yu'allimani. They used to teach min, from ahadin, anyone, hatta, until yaqula, both of them said, innama, indeed, nahnu, we, fitnatun, trial, fa, therefore, la, not, takfur, commit disbelief. So as soon as the discourse reached the mention of the angels, now we find the angels conversing. And what did they say? Of course, what they said is mentioned later on. But there is a remark which the Quran makes. وَمَا يُعَلِّمَانِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ حَتَّى يَقُولَ. وَمَا means they did not teach. Ma is not, yu'alliman, teach. They did not teach anyone, ahadin, anyone. Hatta, until, yaqula, they said, innama nahnu, indeed, innama is indeed, nahnu is we, fitna is trial. So these angels, they said, whenever they would teach people, they would first give a disclaimer. They would first tell them, innama nahnu fitna, we are a trial. Fala takfur, do not commit disbelief. Meaning that the knowledge that they have could be used or abused, could be used positively or could be used negatively. So that is why they said that we are a trial. If you want this knowledge from us, you can use it properly and you can use it wrongly as well. So be aware of that. Fala takfur, and if you use it wrongly, you will be committing disbelief. So all this is understood to be present, and the Quran did not mention it. It leapt to the next part and said, "Fala takfur." So do not commit disbelief. So the in-between part being that we are a trial. If you misuse whatever is whatever we teach you, you will be committing disbelief. Now, this is not mentioned in words. The Quran goes to the next step and says, "Do not commit disbelief," which means that all this is disbelief. If you misuse it, so therefore do not misuse it. Do not commit kufr. You see how the language of the Quran proceeds. That it's a multi-layered. I mean, it's not a multi-layered text in the sense that is used today, but the fact is that things which are understood, they are made to. They are not always expressed in words, and the Quran supposes them to be understood by the reader, and then it goes on to the next step. So it says that "Fala takfur," do not commit disbelief, and then it says "Fayata'allamuna minhuma." Therefore, yata'allamuna, they would learn. Minhuma, min is from, huma is these two referring to these two angels. Ma, that yufarriquna. Yufarriquna means that causes separation. Bihi, through it. Baina, between. Al-mar is husband. Wa, and zawj is wife. He is his. So instead of learning what they should have learned by countering the magic of those times, they started to misuse that knowledge. And what they did was that instead of learning in the way that these angels wanted them to learn, so that it could be a counter to the magic that they were experiencing through various devils and Satan, they, instead of learning an antidote to that magic, instead of doing that, what did they do? They learned from these two angels what caused separation between a husband and wife. So what caused discord, disharmony. So they would learn whatever they would learn from these two angels, not as a means to counter whatever magic and sorcery was rampant in the society, but to cause dissension between a husband and wife. Minhuma ma yufarriquna, so that they could be separated. And remember, whenever a society becomes decadent, the biggest thing that happens, or the worst thing I can say that happens, is that a family unit stands disrupted. And this is precisely what they did, that they started to learn disciplines and things, or witchcraft or magic, that would cause this separation between a husband and wife, so that the whole society would become decadent. So it says, وَمَا هُمْ بِضَارِّينَ بِهِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Now this is a fantastic comment by the Quran, and I think it's an eye-opener for all of us. Let me just first give you its literal and idiomatic translation, then more about it. So wa and ma, not, hum, they, بِضَارِّينَ, harm, bihi, through it, through what they had learned, min ahadin, anyone, illa, except, bi'iznillah, with God's permission. So the point here is that they would not harm through it anyone except through God's permission. So this is a very important sentence of the Quran, and it has a very, very deep significance. It says that if these people became successful in their witchcraft, if these people became successful in their sorcery, it was because God allowed that sorcery to work. God allowed that magic to play its pranks. So the thing which is to be understood here is that whenever evil works its way, it's not that evil has the power per se to go through and ruin people. No, it only happens when God allows it to happen. And God has his own scheme. He allows evil to happen, or make people misuse their free will and cause nuisance for people, because he has created this world on the principle of trial and test, and through this misuse he creates these trials and tests. So remember, whatever trial comes upon us, whether sickness, whether financial problem, whether the problem which occurs through other circumstances like the passing away of some dear departed, whatever trials that we pass through, they are ordained for us because God lets them happen, and he in his own scheme lets them happen so that they become a trial for us, they become a test for us. So this is important to point out here, because you see, there are religions who regard evil to act per se, and therefore they have made a separate god of evil. So if you study Zoroastrianism, you'll find that they have two gods. One is the god of good and the other one is the god of evil. And that is why they think that evil has its own, its own supreme being, and they give him a name as well. So the Quran says that evil, whenever it befalls people, it is not per se that it befalls people. You see, look at these words once again. وَمَا هُمْ بِضَارِّينَ بِهِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. They will not be able to harm anyone. I mean, these people, what they did was they learned witchcraft, that witchcraft which created discord between a husband and wife, which separated them, which broke down a family. And this happened because God allowed that witchcraft or magic to have that power in it to do so. So again, signifying the fact philosophically that it is not evil itself which has the power. It is only when God allows it to take effect, does it take effect. This is an important thing that we have to understand. وَلَقَدْ wa and laqad indeed, alimu, they know, la that, manishtarahu, he who buys or he who takes something, ma lahu, walaqad alimu lima, walaqad alimu la manishtarahu, it means they well know that he who buys this, anyone who buys this would mean who gives preference to this witchcraft, who gives preference to these evil things, to this magic and sorcery. Ma lahu fil akhirati min khalaq. Ma is not, lahu for him, fi in, al akhirah hereafter, min some, khalaq share, which means that they knew that people who buy these things, which means that people who practice these things, who indulge in these things, ma lahu fil akhirati min khalaq, they'll have no share in the hereafter. Khalaq is share. So min khalaq, some share. So they will have no share in the hereafter. Wa and labisa, what an evil. Ma, that. Sharau, they have sold. Bihi, through which. Anfusahum, their own souls. Law, what that. Kanu, they did. Ya'lamun, knew. So idiomatically, we would translate it as that what an evil thing is that which through which they have sold their persons, their own souls. Law kanu, would that they had understood this. So you see again a very, very appropriate remark from the Quran, and anyone who understands Arabic here would see how beautifully this sentence occurs and how the extent of sorrow and yearning, the element of yearning and sorrow from God is present here when you say, would that they knew, which means that I wish that they knew. The amount of harm they are causing themselves, they don't know. And would that they know, would that they have known this, and had they known this, perhaps they would not have indulged in it. And lastly, we have wa and law, if annahum, indeed they, amanu, had professed faith, wa and ittaqaw, shown piety. La is indeed, masubatum min indillah would mean masubatum min indillahi khair, which means the reward from indillah, from God. Khair would have been better. So had they believed and become pious, la masubatum min indillahi khair, the reward they would have got from God would have been much better. La masubatum min indillahi khair. Law kanu ya'lamun. So this is exactly the same verse which has occurred at the end of the last verse as well. Law kanu ya'lamun. Would that they knew it. Would that they knew it. And it's like the yearning once again and the sorrow which is so evident in the Quran. So all in all, you can see that this passage that we have now completed has that strong element of that charge sheet being repeated once again in a different angle, telling them how they were expected to profess faith in God's book, and instead of professing faith in God's book, they ended up denying it. Nabaza fariqum min allazina utul kitab Allahi wara'a zuhurihim, which means that they ended up disregarding their own book. So when they denied the Quran, they were actually denying their own book, because their own book had spoken about the arrival of the Quran. So if you have any questions regarding what we have studied up till now, so this is the time to please ask them.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and we welcome you to this session and send you our prayers and peace. Please make a note that we would like the questions to be relevant for now and be concise. The first question will be by Noshad Shafkat. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, just a small clarification. When you say Samiyana wa Asana, we heard and we disbelieve, couldn't there be an element of regret also in it?
So you see, actually
Like
the
we
words
say,
are
we heard,
Samena.
but we disbelieve.
Yeah. So the words are Samena wa Asaina. We heard and we disobeyed. It's disobeying. So you see, the Quran is portraying their attitude. It's not that they are saying this by words. It is through their attitude. So the word qalu in the Quran has also been used to depict an attitude. So it's not always words which follow what the qalu word states. It also depicts an attitude. So qalu samina wa asaina would mean that they were told to follow the book of God. So what they did was they said, yes, we are going to listen, but we are not going to follow. So this is basically an attitude that they had adopted. So it's like an attitude which is reflecting from their own persona, that they'd heard what God wanted from them, but instead of following what God wanted from them to happen, they said, nothing doing, we're not going to follow. So this is even before starting to disobeying God. It is as if they heard something from God, and their own attitude of compliance, because it was not there. So the Quran says it is as if they said that, yes, we heard, but we're not going to obey. So you see, it's like saying that you hear something, but since you're not going to follow that thing, it is in fact that you have virtually said that we follow and we do not obey. So instead of saying Samena wa Ata'na, that we have heard and we obeyed, their attitude reflected that we have heard, but we are not going to obey.
Right, sir. Thank you very much, and a lovely explanation of the Alif Lam concept, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The next question is by Imran. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad. Thank you very much for explaining the qalu, because you're right that many places it depicts what they stood for, their position or their attitude, and not always the words. If you can repeat the explanation of al, like you mentioned, it could be the jins, could be the, I think you said ahad. Of course, we know specificity and category. Could you kindly just summarize it again? Thank you very much.
So you see, broadly, the Alif Lam consists of two types. One is just referring to a particular category. So, for example, when I say ash-shajar, it means the tree. So I'm not referring to any particular tree. I'm just saying the tree. I mean, referring to all trees. So one type of Alif Lam is in which you refer to the category as a whole, not to some specific part of that category or some specific members of that category. So this is called Alif Lam of jins. Jins, of course, means category. It can also be translated as species. So Alif Lam of species would mean that you're just referring to the species of trees. Or I say ar-rijal. So rijal means men. So when I say ar-rijal, I am not at times particularly referring to any specific rijal or a specific person. I'm just saying men in general. So this is what is called Alif Lam for jins, or for species, or for category. Now there is another Alif Lam which is called for ahad. And ahad means to specify something, for specification. So in that case, you are not referring to all the trees or to all the men. If I take the same example, you are referring to a particular tree or to a particular set of people amongst that main superset. So to give you an example, and the examples actually have been, you can see they have occurred in our passage today as well, a number of times. So whenever you find words as al-kafirin or az-zalimin, so now there is an alif lam on kafirin, there is an alif lam on zalimin. Similarly, you find a word called al-fasiqin. Fasiqin now has an alif lam. In most cases, such alif lams are always referring to people who are already under discussion. So when the Quran says that these wrongdoers did this and they did this, and it would follow up these wrongdoings by saying that God will not guide wrongdoers. Now, it's not that He's not going to guide all wrongdoers. Actually, what is meant here is God is not going to guide these wrongdoers who are just being discussed, because they are the ones who have intentionally denied a prophet of God. They don't deserve to be guided. So God is not going to guide these wrongdoers. So in general, al-kafirun, al-zalimun, al-mushrikun, all these alif lams refer to specific categories, and that is why they're called the alif lam of Ahad, which means that they specify a category within that main category. So they are specifying a particular set of people. So in this particular case, they are specifying the Jews and the Christians, for example, of the times of Prophet Muhammad, and not to all Jews and Christians. So if you translate that famous verse which I cited earlier on, that don't take the Jews and the Christians to be friends, so that would be a wrong translation, because again there is an alif lam on the Jews and the word Christian. The Arabic is al Yahud wa an Nasara. So a correct translation here would be these Jews and these Nazarenes. So because these are the people who are being discussed in the prior verses, referring to the fact that they are the ones who were expecting a last prophet to come to them, they were expecting the book of God to come to them, and they were convinced that this is the prophet that they were waiting for. But when he arrived, they did not like it. That why is it that he has arrived from the Ishmaelites? He has arrived from the Israel. I mean, instead of arriving from their own lineage, he has arrived from their cousins. So this is what they did not like. And the Quran says, "Hasadan min indi anfusihim." This is the jealousy that they had. That they were jealous that why did that prophet come from their cousins and not from their own lineage? And that is why they became adamant on denying. But then, as I said, all this would be generally mentioned in the prior verses whenever you pick up the Quran from. And that is why we would translate all such verses as that God does not guide these disbelievers, these wrongdoers, these defined people. So, I mean, I know this needs a lot of practice, but the thing that I need to point you towards is that whenever you're reading the Quran, the Arabic, especially because that's what I'm trying to teach you, that without knowing the grammar, you're able to translate it. The important thing is, if you practice on your own, always, do it first by thinking what the alif lam is. You think is conveying, whether it's of jins or whether it's of ahad. And when you make that paragraph, for example, you translate to yourself, then you can look up, for example, Ustaz Ghamidi's Al-Bayan or Ustaz Amin Islahi's Surah Baqarah, because both these scholars, they specify alif lam. And in fact, Ustaz Amin Farahi, who is the forerunner of both these gentlemen, he is the first one to have laid stress on this. And I must not be unfair to some of the other commentators as well. For example, Zamakhshari, a 5th century commentator of the Quran, also makes this distinction at times in his tafsir, and so do Tabari and some of the other mufassirun, but they don't do so consistently. So I can say this with the reasonable certainty that with consistency, the first person to always give due regard to alif lam was Ustaz Amiruddin Farahi. But because all of his works are generally in Arabic and it would be difficult for you to have recourse to them, so whenever you practice a translation of a paragraph of the Quran, do it on your own and then see how these scholars at times translate this alif lam. So this would be like a good practice for you to understand the Quran and also to understand how deeply the Quran is entrenched in the milieu, in the surroundings in which it was revealed, and how important it is to realize that it is a dialogue that is taking place between God and the 7th century Arabian milieu that was there, first in Mecca and then in Medina, and how this dialogue processes from one to the other, and also it diverges and then it converges once again, and how various entities are subtly pointed to, not by just pointing them out in words, but by actually referring them by this very, very subtle, I would say, instrument called alif lam. Another example that I'd like you to give, which might make things easier for you to understand, is that, for example, in the case of Adam and Eve, when that incident of keeping them in the garden and the orchard is concerned, and they were told that they should not go towards that tree. So the Quran uses the word "La taqraba hazihi shajara." And the Quran says that you can live in this garden, live in this orchard, but do not go near this tree. So you see, just to make you understand how things work, you see here it is very easy to understand the word ash-shajara to be this tree, because we already have a word for that, and that is hazihi, which means this particular tree is being pointed to. But for example, if this word had not existed, la taqraba shajara would be the words, we would have understood from the passage itself that a particular tree is being referred to. not all the trees, a particular tree, and therefore ash-shajara should have been translated as this tree. But in the passage itself, because of the fact that hazihi itself has occurred, it becomes more easier for you to understand that here it is already a specified thing, because hazihi is specifying, it's saying this tree. So this part is being divulged by the word hazihi. So the point that I'm making is that at times the Quran makes it very easier for you to translate it alif lam, because an indication of that is already present. For example, hazihi is making you understand that, this tree is being implied, not all the trees. So in fact, what we have to understand here is that this hazihi is understood at many other places without being mentioned. And whenever that is the case, then you have the alif lam of Ahmed present there, which means that this type of tree is being implied here. Another example that you might want to understand better, because this is a very fundamental concept in the Quran. Let me give you an example from Hadith literature. So the paintings or the pictures which have been prohibited in Hadith literature, you'll find that they are mentioned not in the absolute sense. So you'll seldom find the words saying that all pictures are forbidden. You'll find the words like the words which mention this prohibition as hazih suwar, tilka suwar. Hazih again means these. A suwar means pictures. So the alif lam on a suwar is already being specified by the word hazi, which means that a particular category of pictures is being prohibited, not all forms of pictures. You see, the cardinal mistake that has been made here is that people who think that all types of pictures have been forbidden to be made, they think that these words say that hazihi, they disregard the word hazihi, and they would say that all pictures are forbidden because the word pictures have come and the alif lam is actually embracing all the categories. Whereas they disregard the fact that it's not occurring in the absolute sense. It is not said asur. The word asur, which is the plural of surat, or means pictures, is not occurring, alone. It is occurring with another word, which is hazihi. And the alif lam is also there over suwar. So here, just as in hazih shajara, a particular form of shajar or a particular form of tree was addressed, hazih suwar would refer to a particular form of pictures, referring to those pictures which are the basis of idolatry, which people worship, which people, they regard as deities. So again, hazih suwar, tilka suwar is referring to a particular category of pictures and not to all pictures. Just as a shajara is referring to a particular shajar or a particular tree. In that case, it's a metaphorical tree. So you see, at times the word hazihi and tilka, they already come to your rescue. And you know that now here the alif lam is not, giving you the sense that all the members of that category. It is specifying it to particular members. So in that case, in the case of the hadith, the meaning would be that such type of pictures, these type of pictures are forbidden, referring to the fact that only pictures which cause that idolatry to progress. But if you don't, give regard to this alif lam or to this tilka, you will end up translating as that all types of pictures are forbidden. So you see, such is the importance of this alif lam, that whether the Quran or the hadith, if you have to understand them deeply, you must know that how this alif lam works.
Thank you very much, Jazakumullah khair, and very good explanation. Thank you.
Next question is by Riaz. Please go ahead, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr.
Wa alaikum assalam.
The ayah number 97, it says, Nazzalahu wala qalbika. So
Yes.
it doesn't mean the physical heart. Does it mean the ruh of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
Well, as we have discussed this earlier, that the word qalb is not just the qalb that we are aware of, which means the heart, in the way it's a pumping machine. The Quran uses the word heart to be the center of one's soul as well, something which is in which one's soul manifests itself. So when it says that the Quran was revealed on the Prophet's heart, it means that it was given to his soul. That we of course cannot gauge what exactly is meant by that. But the distinction which is being made is that it was not given to his physical self. It is not that his physical self received that Quran. It was to that person that was found in that physical self, which is the soul of the Prophet. He received that Quran, and then he, of course, transferred it to his companions.
Next question is by Annie. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad.
Salam.
If you could go back to 102,
Yes.
And so two questions here. One is that, when we read about Solomon, even in the Quran, we do read that he was able to hold a court which was almost magical. He was able to command the winds and the jinns, etc. So there was some element of magic that he possessed. It's just that that magic came from a place of faith, or at least he acknowledged in other words, he acknowledged the source of that magic, which is what made it legitimate versus what, what the people referred to in this verse did, in that they didn't acknowledge, or their magic didn't come from a place of faith. So it was more about, kind of making a bargain to get the power to a particular end without acknowledging that the power is coming from one source, which is God. So in translating or explaining that verse, where you said that Harut and Marut say they're only a trial, so don't disbelieve. And you said that the subtext is that they're only a trial. If you follow the magic, you will get this. If you don't follow the magic, you'll get that. So don't be disbelievers. But some people, interpret it as saying that, the two angels were teaching people, the secrets of the cosmos or the hidden dimensions of the cosmos. And, which could have been for the sake of, healing and goodness and wisdom. So the message was more that if you use it for those good purposes, it won't harm you. But if you use it for bad purposes, then it harms you. And if you take that interpretation, it suggests that magic per se was not, the problem, but not acknowledging the source of magic and hence not being guided by that judgment was the problem. So if you could just comment on that. I mean, that particular phrase that you inserted when you were, translating one of it.
You see, I'll direct your attention to the verse itself. And if you have the verse, I think I'm displaying that verse on your screen. You see, you just need to follow the Arabic the way I'd like you to follow it to make sense of the verse. You see, if you look at the verse, when it starts, it says, Wattabaru. Just look at this word, Wattabaru. And then it says, Ma tatlu shayateen ala mulke Sulaiman, wa ma kafara Sulaiman, walakinna shayateen kafaru yu'allimuna an-nasa sihr. This is just all one thing. So from Wattabaru ma, it says they followed, and whatever they followed is now mentioned after that. And the next thing that you need to connect is that what says, in the last part of the last line of the verse of this page, it says, Vama unzila alal malakain. So this Wattabaru is actually connected first to Ma Tatlu and then to Ma Unzila. So the translation would be that they followed what was revealed to the devils. So all the rest is just an explanation. So it's like a parenthetical thing that has been inserted. Let me retranslate that for you, that they followed what was revealed, what the Satans used to chant in the kingdom of Solomon. And Solomon never indulged in disbelief by indulging in magic and sorcery. It is these devils who indulged in these sorcery and therefore committed disbelief. And they would ask people, and they would ask people to learn. Yu'allimuna an-nasa sihr. They would teach people magic. So this is all one thing. So if you can, take stock of this, and the next thing that you need to understand is that this Wattabaru is now connected to the next Ma. So it is first Wattabu ma tatlu shayateen, and then it says Wattabu ma unzila alal malakain. So people that you are referring to actually don't take this verse in this sense, and they take it continuously. And they do not connect this Wattabaru with what is mentioned as Vama Unzila. And as a result, they think that these angels were also, taught something in the sense that was called black magic. And this black magic was a means to counter some of the other magical aspects that were found in the times of Solomon. So the fact is that Wattabaru ma tatlu shayateen is actually appended or connected to Wattabu ma unzila alal malakain as well. So they are the people who followed what these devils did, and they are the people who followed what was revealed to these malakain by misusing what was revealed to these malakain. So basically, they were revealed an antidote to the magic that was found, and instead of using that antidote to counter that magic, they started to misuse that antidote which was provided to them, and they started to, to cause dissension between a husband and wife. So the point that I'm making here is that basically it was an antidote, and as far as the fact is concerned that what came from the court of Solomon was not magic. So a better word for that would be he was given those miraculous powers, and those miraculous powers, of course, were the ones through which he controlled the wind. He had the ability to talk to jinn. He used them for the building of the temple. All this is mentioned in the Quran, and he was also a person in whose era there were people who had indulged in a lot of sorcery, and God in that era revealed these two angels, or sent down these two angels, so that people could counter that sorcery and magic. But instead of following these two angels the way God wanted them to follow, yes, they did follow. They did learn something from them, but did not learn what God wanted them to learn. They instead learned something which they misused by causing dissension. So I think what we need to understand here is that word ma wattabaru is actually connected to ma tatlu and to ma unzila, which refers to the fact that it's they who are given this. This is what they set off to do, and the first thing that they did was indulge in magic, and the other thing that they did was that instead of indulging in the counter or the antidote to magic, they once again misused that new discipline that was revealed to them as an antidote to magic. I'm sorry, maybe it's a little complex here, and it requires a little knowledge of Arabic as well. But I think you need to reflect on the fact that how Wattabau has been connected to Matatlu and to Ma'unzila.
So the way that, the translation, if I can just quote from one translation,
Yes.
they've kind of, like in English, the way that, we're starting a sentence and then we add a phrase in the middle of the sentence with two hyphens
Right.
at the start and the end, and then continue the original intent. So they've
Right.
kind of translated that way. So they say, and they followed what the devils pursued during Solomon's reign, and then hyphen,
Right.
which is the
Mhm.
just the independent clause in between.
That is the parenthetical sentence.
Right. And Solomon was not faithless, but it was the devils who were faithless. And then end
Right.
of the parenthetical sentence, and then teaching people magic, which refers back to devils. So
Right.
it kind of, I think it follows your logic. I may be wrong. I don't understand Arabic. So but I feel like it is following your logic, which seems to make a little bit more sense because, what Solomon did would be seen as magic. I don't know how you would define magic, but
I've just used the word miraculous power. So you see, just as Jesus was given those miracles, it was not magic that Jesus did when he brought people back to life, or walked on the sea or water, or some of the other miracles that he had been given. So similarly, Moses, Jesus, and here we're talking about Solomon. So these were not magical powers. Magical powers have an entirely different source. These are like things that you can learn and have a knack for it. But miracle is something that you can only have from God. You cannot learn a miracle. You cannot learn how to work a miracle. So a proper word for that would be that Solomon was given these miraculous powers to control the jinn, to control the winds. And in his own times, sorcery became rampant. And in order to provide a counter to this sorcery, the Almighty revealed these two angels who taught people that how they can counter these things. So basically, I think the correct word would be miraculous powers, which God bestows on all his prophets, which are called the bayinat at other instances as well. And this is how we find things in the Quran regarding different prophets of God. So these basically are miraculous powers which are endowed to these prophets.
So then it's not clear to me why Harut and Marut were sent. If they were not just teaching the antidote, because apparently they weren't, because they were giving everybody a choice and saying,
this is again a part of God's scheme and trial, that he did reveal that antidote, but that antidote was again with that caution that this antidote is of such nature that you can also misuse it. So on the one hand, you can counter the magic and witchcraft and sorcery of the people of those era, which they were indulging in, because basically this is what God has revealed these two angels. But a slight misuse of the same knowledge could could end up going south as well. I mean, going in a different way as well. So God did reveal that antidote, but the nature of that antidote was that it was a test. You see, look at the words that the Quran says. It says, "Innama nahnu fitna." We are a trial. So that trial which God has always, He has put all of us to trial. So He keeps finding ways and means to keep trying us. So it was not just a sweet thing that He could have done. He said, "Well, this is the antidote," and you go and you apply it. The antidote itself was revealed in a way that it became a trial for people. They could use it or they could misuse it. So you see, this is the scheme of God, that He does things for us, and in many cases He provides us with solutions, but those solutions themselves are fraught with a lot of trial. Look at wealth itself. So wealth itself is a trial. If you use it properly, it's a good thing. It's a boon. But if you misuse it, it's going to end up as a bane. So this knowledge also, this discipline also was something, and we don't know the exact nature of it, but the way it has been expressed in the Quran is that you could have easily misused it, and look at what the Quran says, that they did end up misusing it. Instead of using it to counter magic, they ended up using it to create dissension between a husband and wife.
But doesn't that make it magic, right? So because you said
it's not magic. Remember, it says unzila. You see, unzila, the word unzila means that it's from God. And something which is from God in this nature is always of a miraculous nature. It's something which is endowed per se with certain powers. Otherwise, the word unzila would have been absolutely inappropriate. The word unzila means it was revealed to them from God. So let me point out the exact word. It says, "Vama unzila alal malakain," what was revealed to these angels by God. So God is, if you study the history of magic and sorceries, the Almighty has condemned sorcery and magic at other places in the Quran. And so He would not end up doing the same thing. So Wama Unzila means that He revealed a fresh discipline, something new, which would counter witchcraft and sorcery.
Okay, last question.
Many thanks.
So in our tradition, Harut and Marut, so is the understanding that they were embodied beings living in Babylon, or is it just a concept?
Of course, they were two angels. They would be in the garb of human beings. Otherwise, people would not have been able to go to them and learn. Because angels, when they come in their own form, we are not able to, not able to recognize them because they have their own form. They are made of light, etc. So we also know that when angels did visit Prophet Abraham, and on other occasions to other prophets like Prophet Lot, they came in human form. Even they came in human form to Mary. So in all probability, these two angels were in human form, but God did inform them that although they are human, but they are angelic in their composition.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for such an elaborate answer and questions. One question from the chat, sir. It says, could you please explain the terms Ahad Khariji and Ahad Zehni?
I would request you to, for the moment, not indulge in Ahad Khariji and Ahad Zehni, because these are further subcategories which have been delineated by certain later grammarians. So they have divided the Alif Lam of Jins and the Alif Lam of Ahad into further subcategories. And I think that is, again, a form of advanced Arabic grammar, which I would, at the moment, ask you to just not indulge yourself in. For the moment, just learn these two concepts. The more you are able to grasp them, the more you will be able to understand the Quran, because Ahad Zehni, Ahad Khariji, or Mahiyat Jins, they are just terms which are used, and maybe later on as we go along the Quran, I can introduce them to you as well. But for all practical purposes, for now, please do grasp these two main categories. One is of Jins and the other is of Ahad. All the rest are their subcategories, and without even going in the terminology, once you are able to make sense of these two by differentiating between the two, you'll already be following those principles without being aware of the terminology. And my intention here is that don't get yourself burdened with these terminologies. I have already burdened you with these two new words, and they should be sufficient as far as things where they stand now are concerned.
Thank you so much, sir. Next question is from Akram Bhanti. Please go ahead.
Sir, in 98, I think Allah Ta'ala says that they had animosity against Allah and His Rasools, and then Allah Ta'ala and Malaika, and Allah Ta'ala mentions Jibreel and Mikael. So it's raised a question in my head that was Mikael also bringing the wahi from Allah Ta'ala?
No, he is not bringing wahi, but if you look at at some of the biblical verses, you'll find that it was like their guardian angel. He was like someone whom the Jews thought that they fare much better with him, and he is like their protector, and he's someone who's always a well-wisher of them. And they knew that of course, wahi is something that was brought down to Prophet Moses also through Gabriel. But the thing is that they became his enemies when he came down with wahi for Prophet Muhammad, because they did not want him to come to someone who's not from their own lineage. So therefore, they became his enemies. And as far as Michael is concerned, he was never given this duty. But if you study the Bible, just pick up the Bible, or maybe type Michael and the word Old Testament or the New Testament, and you'll see how in the Bible, Michael is regarded by these Israelites to be their savior, so to speak.
If Michael was their favorite, then why does Allah put here when he's talking about animosity, that they had animosity against Jibreel and against...
Right. So, I mean, this is the beauty of the Quran. You see, the Quran says that Gabriel and Michael are both of the same category. You cannot be friend of one and the enemy of the other. If you are enemy of one, then you are the enemy of the other as well. You just cannot befriend one angel and be an enemy of the other angel, because both are God's angels and both are of the same category. So this is what the beauty of the Quran is. And it says that if you have this animosity with Gabriel, then you cannot be friends with Michael as well. So both are your enemies.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Yasmin, if I have 1 second question, if you allow.
Go ahead, please.
And Dr. Sahab, you translated seher into 2 words, magic and sorcery.
Yes.
What are the distinction? Because they're both magic, isn't it?
Yes, these are just different words, because sorcery is basically used by soothsayers. They would do, for all practical purposes, you can say that they are synonymous. So, I mean, you don't need to make a distinction. But as you can see, that magic has certain chants, certain mantras that you use, and sorcery it is also, it encompasses a little more than that. It encompasses certain predictions which are made, certain prophecies which are made, certain we call them foretelling which are made, like future predictions of future projections. So, I mean, there are minor differences, but for all practical purposes, I mean, you can use these 3 words interchangeably: magic, witchcraft, and sorcery.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. The next question is from Abdul Rahman. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem.
Walaikum assalam.
Dr. Saleem, this is my first class in your session, so I just wanted to thank you and appreciate the time and effort you are taking to conduct this session and the webinar. It's been a great honor to be in your class, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much for attending it, and hopefully, inshallah, these sessions would prove beneficial for all of us.
Thank you very much, my dear teacher and participants. This was a beautiful session again, and inshallah, we'll meet you next week.